The information provided by Trading Forex Price Action to you does not constitute personal financial advice. The information provided is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation, or needs. It should not be used, relied upon, or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice.
Weekly Forecast.
Hey guys, this is a weekly forecast for December 6th through the 10th of 2021. Alright, we'll start off with the Euro-USD pair. This is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since this price action right here is very strong short, and this move right here is still having a ways to go, in the long term I'm short biased. Right back down to this pivot low right here. However, because of a breakout of this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here, and that breakout being right here, in the medium term I am long biased right back up to this pivot high right here. And moreover, since the last weekly short trade that form was right here, and although it already hit its main target right at these levels right here, there still hasn't been any signs of any long strength on the higher or lower time frames for the time being. In the short term, I'm short bias right back down to this trend line retest level right here. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Let me run you by the setup I've been looking at for the past couple of months. So in the beginning of this year, there was a strong short trade that formed right here. Then a weak long trade formed. So at this point, the bias was short. Or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot low right here before reaching this pivot high. And so as price pulled back, I was looking for short entries right back down to this pivot low as a target. And then the same thing repeated, another weak long trade formed. So again, as price pulled back, I was looking for short entries right back down to this pivot low as a target. And then again, the same thing happened. Another weak long trade formed. So as price pulled back to these areas right here, close to the price level that price should not reach according to this bias. If you recall, I took a short entry at this 1.2250 level right here with its stop loss at this pivot high right here and its main target right down here. And then the following week, another strong short trade formed right here. So at this point, I moved the stop loss from this pivot high right down to this pivot high right here. And so at this point, price was now stating that price is likely to reach this pivot low right here before reaching this pivot high. And then the following week, as price gave a small pullback to this level right here, I took another short entry at 121.30, roughly in these areas, again with the same stop loss at this pivot high and the same target right here. And then as price started moving toward its target, if you recall, I was always watching for lower time frame confirmation of this short bias, and there was consistently those lower time frame confirmations, and so I stayed in both those short trades. However, at this point right here, before price reached its main target at this level right here, if you recall, I took out 90% out of both positions due to overall trade management. However, left 10% of both positions in to see if it could get any further. And then the following week, that main target was hit right here, and although price gave a pullback at these levels right here, there were no signs of lower time frame long strength, and so I still kept 10% of both those short positions in. And then in the following weeks, price continues descent, and even on these legs down, there was never any confirmation on the lower time frames of long strength, and so I still kept both those positions in. And then if you recall in earlier forecasts, I was mentioning I will be willing to take 5% out of both those short positions at a monthly trend line level, roughly at these levels right here. However, as you can see, price did not reach that level by about 15 pips. However, at the current moment, there is still no long strength on the lower time frames, so I'm willing to keep both those short positions in, at least to that trend line level I was talking about. Okay, and if you don't understand what I'm talking about in terms of weekly biases and strong short trades and whatnot, please watch my price action trading course. For that course is designed to provide you the necessary information so you can understand these forecasts and analysis. Okay, so for the time being, I'm just waiting to see if price could get to that monthly trend line level right here However, there are a couple levels I am looking at for price to get through. So let me go ahead and show you those on the monthly chart. Okay, so on this monthly chart, first of all, that trend line I'm willing to take another 5% out of those short positions is this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now, price did not reach that trend line by about 15 pips. And at the current moment, since there is no signs of lower time frame long strength, I'll be seeing price could reach this trend line level. Now, moreover, on this monthly chart, what is providing long strength, or in other words, becoming a barrier for price to come down, is a monthly gap level. So let me just go ahead and zoom in here. Okay, so on this monthly chart, there's a medium gap level that runs right at these levels right here. That price is trying to get through to reach that monthly trend line level. Now let me go ahead and show you those levels. So the upper end of this gap will be at 1.1343 and the lower end will be at 1.1278. Okay, so for the time being, I'll be watching it monthly, but moreover, even on the weekly charts, if price could get through this gap level. However, keep in mind that although price at the current moment is not showing any strong long strength on the lower time frames, that could change at any moment. So fundamentally, if price does not break out of this gap level, there's always the possibility that a daily or weekly long trade may form. In which case, if this does form, again, I'll be waiting for a daily or weekly short trade to form. And I'll measure the strength of this short trade against this long trade, and then decide a bias, whether short or long, on the daily and weekly charts. Now, one last thing I do want to mention in terms of this short leg is that at a basic level, although there were good entries at this level right here and another one right here, for the stop loss was at this pivot high right here, there were no daily or weekly entries that formed all the way down throughout this entire move. However, recall there were opportunities with lower time frame price action setups in which you could have taken intraday short entries along with this higher time frame short bias. And moreover, as these lower time frame price patterns did form for intraday short trades, it would have been wise to extend a portion of these short trades along with this higher time frames bias. So basically what I'm trying to say, when there's a higher time frame short bias and intraday price patterns do form and the targets are rather small, again, if the higher time frames bias is short and price is yet to hit its main target, it's always wise to leave a little bit in of your position, at the very least to this higher time frames main target, which was right here, and perhaps even leaving a little bit more in to see if it could get any lower. All right, so that's just one thing to keep in mind. All right, so let me just sum this up again on the weekly chart. Okay, so again on this weekly chart, what I'll be looking for the next couple of weeks is, first of all, if price could get to that monthly trend line level right here, where I'm planning to take out another 5% of both short positions. However, recall that there is a monthly medium gap that runs right through these levels right here. And although there is no strong long strength on the lower time frames at this moment, there is always the possibility of a daily or weekly long trade to form. And if this long trade forms, again, like always, I'll be waiting for another short trade to form. And then I'll gauge the strength of both of these to come up with a new weekly or daily bias, whether long or short. All right, so now let's go on to the pound dollar. Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since this horizontal level right here that's attached to this pivot right here just became legitimate with its 3 touches, with 1, 2, and 3 right here, and since price has a tendency to want to test strong levels, in the long term I am long biased right back up to this horizontal level. However, on the weekly chart, for the last couple of months, there were many strong short trades that formed against weak long trades. And just recently, price hit its main target for those short trades roughly at these levels right here. So in the short term, I am neutral biased. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Let me run you by the setup I've been looking at for the past couple of months. So at the beginning of this year, there was a strong short trade that formed right here. Then a week long trade formed. And so at this point, the bias was short, or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot low right here before reaching this pivot high. And that target was hit right here. And moreover, as price pulled back, I was still looking for short entries. However, at this point right here, if you recall, there was compact long price action that formed that shows strong long strength. So at this point, the bias changed into long, or in other words, price was now likely to reach this pivot high right here before reaching this pivot low. And then in the following weeks, that target was hit at this level right here. And simultaneously, another strong short trade formed right here. And then a weak long trade formed right here. And so at this point, the bias became short. And so as price pulled back, I was looking for short entries right back down to this pivot low as a target. And the same thing happened again. Another weak long trade formed. Again, so as price pulled back, I was looking for short entries. However, before price hit its main target of right here, price gave a big pullback up to these levels and again made another strong short trade right here. So at this point, the bias was still short. However, now price was now likely to reach this pivot low before reaching this pivot high. So another way to look at this is the main stop loss is right here, while the main target was right down here. And then furthermore, price came down and hit its target, and again repeated the same thing. Another weak long trade formed. And so as price pulled back, I was looking for short entries. And as you can see, there was a great pullback for a short entry. For the stop loss was at this pivot high right here, with its new main target being right down here. However, as you guys know, I took a leave from trading due to medical conditions, and so I could not take this short entry. Okay, and furthermore, price came right back down to hit its main target right here. And then about 3 weeks ago, another weak long trade formed. So the same thing happened. So if I were to be trading, I would have waited for a pullback to look for short entries, perhaps on the lower time frames, with this main target at this level right here. Okay, so for the time being, that main target was hit at this level. So the weekly bias is neutral. However, price is currently approaching strong monthly level where another long trade may form. So let me just go ahead and show you those levels on the monthly chart. Okay, so on this monthly chart, price is at a medium-sized gap level right here. Now let me just show you the levels for those. Okay, so the upper level will be at 1.3210 and the lower level will be at 1.3181. Okay, and this gap level is relatively strong, for it is the second biggest gap in recent price action, with the first and biggest gap being at this level right here. Okay, so there is a possibility that price may make a long trade at current levels. Now, if this long trade does form, I'll measure how much long strength there is against the last weekly short trade that formed at these levels that I showed you earlier. Now, if there's more long strength than short strength, then the bias will be long, with this main target at that last weekly short trade's pivot high right here. And conversely, if there's more short strength than long strength, then again, I'll be waiting for a pullback as much as possible back to that last weekly short trade stop loss level, so I could perhaps take another short entry with this main target at that hypothetical long trade's pivot low. Okay, so that's the setups I'll be looking for in the coming weeks. However, there is one aspect of these gaps that I do want to mention, so let me just get rid of these. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there is a medium-sized gap at current levels right now. However, as you can see, there are smaller gaps right above these levels. And there's actually another one that I did not put on this chart right in between these levels. So it's pretty much sandwiched in between. So what that looks like basically is there's a small gap, another small gap, and then there's a medium-sized gap at current levels. Now, an important idea to keep in mind is that, as I mentioned in my price action trading course, what dictates the strength of any gap is always going to be the size of the gap. So this size gap will be stronger than a gap that's this size, and this gap will be stronger than a gap of smaller size. And like I always mention, the way in these gaps become huge gaps like these is often many smaller gaps actually overlap each other, which gradually creates a bigger gap. So when you're looking for gaps, you really want to be detailed in terms of, are these gaps overlapping or not? Because in the current case, this gap is only a medium-sized gap, because these smaller gaps that are really close to it, literally by a couple of pips, slightly do not overlap each other. And thus this gap does not provide that much strength. However, on the other hand, if these three gaps are actually overlapping, that'll make a pretty big gap, this size right here, which is stronger than the last medium-sized gap, which is up here, right? Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that when you're looking for gaps, really be meticulous in terms of, do these gaps overlap or not? And that could literally be by 1 pip, because the size of the gap is what dictates the strength of the opposing strength it creates. Alright, so let me just sum this back up on the weekly chart. Okay, alright, so again on the weekly chart, the last weekly short trade that formed was right here. And so for the time being, I'll be waiting for another weekly long trade to form and measure the strength of it against this last weekly short trade. And if this long trade is weaker than this last weekly short trade, then the bias will be short, or in other words, price will be likely to reach this hypothetical long trade's pivot low before reaching this last weekly short trade's pivot high. And moreover, if the opposite is true, if there is more long strength than this last weekly short strength, then the bias will be long, or in other words, price is likely to reach this last weekly short trade's pivot high before reaching this hypothetical long trade's pivot low. Okay, alright, so that's it for the weekly forecast. I hope you guys have a great week, and thanks for watching. Okay, bye.